Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of the Reference Steering Committee, we're very happy that you've come along today. Just a couple of things to mention. If you've got your mobile phones with you, we would love you to use them on Twitter if you use hashtag RISG2017, but also if you could please mute them, that would be great. If anybody needs the bathrooms, they are just through that door there. And I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation. And I think we are right to go. Okay, so good morning. First up this morning, we have Christine Kreger and Kieran Hixon from the State Library of Colorado, and they will be talking to us about the technology reference interview and much more, I'm sure. So welcome, Kieran and Christine. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I'll spin the camera around so that you can see our audience while you're talking. There we are. Have we lost Sam? We've lost Christine.
Did Christine go away?
She did.
Alrighty then. So Christine is the professional development coordinator for the state of Colorado, and she works in Denver in a little cube farm. And I live in a very rural town. It's a ranching community in the south end of Colorado, and I work from my house. And before I worked at the state library, I used to work in the library in town here, and I worked as the circ staff, the IT staff, the payroll, the head snow shoveler, maintenance, you name it. It's a small town. If you've ever worked in a small library, you kind of know how that goes. And I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint here, I think, because this is what Christine was going to do, but no, it'll work, I'm sure. Except I can't see it now. Hey, where'd it go? Okay, let's try that again.
Yep.
All right, and that's Denver, where Christine lives. And we have a website at the Colorado State Library that we call the Create site, and it has lots of stuff about customer service and technology, and there are many a tutorial. And I think this is what somebody in your library saw that got them to call us. Not sure. And what we're drawing this presentation from is from a tutorial I did for a project here, and it's online if you're interested. And one last note before we get started. Hopefully Christine will pop back in, and she knows the parts that she's supposed to do, and I'm going to wing that part. So pardon me. And I guess the important thing to say is I've worked in libraries so long that I remember when we still had paper catalogs, and technology was a lot different, and like we got a computer for the library, and now that it looks a lot different. And I wasn't always tech inclined, but I think a lot of it comes from a place of customer service. And so that's kind of what you can expect today. Is I'm going to walk you through some of the what, why, and how of a technology reference interview, and I'll share some resources and answer some questions. And I'm kind of going to start with a story of how I came up with this kind of tech reference interview thing. And it started for me. I was in the back of the library, and the library has all of 3 people that works in it. And I was at the back doing some stuff, and the staff came and said that they were having some problems printing out something on the computer. So I went up, to the front, and there were like 25 people in the room. And this is very unusual. We have 5 computers, and there's maybe a line occasionally, like by like one person, maybe 2 people. Very not normal to have like 20, 25 people. And they weren't people that normally used the library. And a couple years previous in our town, we'd had some really hard economic times, and the big factory in town had gone out of business. And they're just building on the edge of town this new dollar store. And the folks at the dollar store were using an online application, and the folks in the library were trying to fill it out. They used to have like a little, I guess like a little kiosk at the dollar store, but something had happened to it. So they had all come to fill out their applications online at the library. So we had a few problems going on. The application itself was showing up in a flash animation thing, so you couldn't print it out. And it had several pages. You had to hit like continue at the bottom of each page. So they couldn't print out the whole thing, even if they could get like a screenshot of one of the pages. And there were quite a few people that were trying to fill out the application that had never used computers before and weren't all that literate to begin with. So being computer literate was just another level of complexity on top of it. And the staff was really stressed because we weren't ready for a crowd like that using the computer, and we weren't able to help. And the staff were feeling silly, like they couldn't print out the screen, like it was just being difficult for them, and they were stressed, and everybody was really anxious because this is a big deal. This is a job. So I had this brilliant idea. I'm like, I'll go down to the dollar store and maybe they have them all printed out and I could bring them back, and maybe the fella that's hiring would like to come down and give his advice, or maybe he has something to say about it. So I went down to the dollar store and I told the guy my great idea, and he kind of got mad at me, and he was like, look, if they can't fill out an online application, I don't want them working for me. They'll never be able to use my cash register. And I just thought that was the silliest thing. I mean, it's a dollar store. Everything's a buck. How complicated could the cash register really be? But, what am I going to say, So I got back on my drive to the library. I was trying to figure out how I was going to go in there and make the staff feel more confident in their ability and in their tech skills, and how I was going to help my community, because this was a really important thing, and people were really anxious, and I wanted it to go well. So I get back in there, and as I got in there, I was thinking about how we teach literacy in general, beyond just like computer literacy. And I started to think about how I really have no idea about most anything that folks come in to find out about, and I kind of like help them anyway. And that's when I had my aha moment. I thought, yes, right. I don't have to know the answer. I just have to know how to help people. And it's really about customer service. And so I want to tell you a little story about Timmy. And he came in one day in the 5th grade here. So when the kids are like 11, 12 maybe, they do a report on a country, not the United States. And Timmy had come in and he was going to do a report on Uganda. Now, sometimes, like when people come in with tech questions, it seems somehow okay for somebody on the CERC staff to be like, I don't know anything about Excel formulas. I can't help you. You'll have to wait till, Sally comes in and she can help you. And I really don't like that. And so when Timmy came in and he was like, I have to do a report on Uganda. And my first thought in my head is, oh my God, I don't know what continent that's on. And, I had to kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, yeah, let's do a report on Uganda, and we looked it up on the computer, on our catalog. We found a couple history books. We found a couple travel books that might have better pictures. And he said that Mrs. Bennett would allow, like 2 online sources. So we went to the computers, signed up to use a computer, got on there. I showed him how to figure out if the website was a legitimate website or if it was like some crazy person got on the internet and typed something about something. And I also showed him the books on how to cite your references, the references that you used for your report. I didn't have to know anything about Uganda. I had to know how to help him, and I had to help him figure out about Uganda. And the same thing is true for technology. I don't suppose Christine's back by any chance. Okay, so oh well. So a technology reference interview kind of follows the same pattern as a reference interview. And I can kind of see y'all's hands there. How many of y'all are familiar with a reference interview? Yeah, bunch of you. All right. I saw the hands. So it's just kind of a basic asking of certain questions in a certain order to try to understand what's going on. The first time I ever used it, a fella came in and he asked me for a book on kids, and it took me almost 3 to 5 minutes to figure out he meant goats and not children. So it's that kind of inquiry. So you verbalize. You can't necessarily guarantee that the person that's asking you the question is verbalizing correctly what it is they want. They could say, I want a book on Persian rugs. And what they actually want is to look at patterns of Persian rugs. And what you're going to hand them is this tome of the history of Persian rugs. And that's not what they're really looking for. But they don't know what you have, and so they try to ask it in the best way they know how. And in a reference interview, you're just sort of like repeating what they said, so you think you got it. So you wanted a book on, and making it a little more clear. And you're kind of explaining, well, I'm going to look in the history section here. And then they're like, well, I don't really care about the history. And you go, oh, okay. So you're kind of helping them sort it. And this is kind of the steps that Christine found. And it's always good to be welcoming. I think this is really a lot about customer service and asking open-ended questions. And again, listening and clarifying, talking about the search for information, and then following up with them. So this is where Christine and I act out a reference interview for technology. I'm going to do both parts of it because, I'm special. Yeah. So I know one of the things that happens a lot around here, and I assume it's similar pretty much everywhere, is so some guy comes in and see, she's making a joke here about how old I am, but I am not that old. And they say something like, I want to read a book on my phone. And you go, and then you remember, okay, yeah, right. No, it's okay. I could do this. And that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach where you're about, I don't know what you all have. We have this thing called overdrive, and it's hellacious. And you're thinking, okay, I'm going to download it. I can't even tell what kind of phone he has. And then he's trying to hand it to you, and you're like, I don't want to hold your phone because it's your phone and I'm going to break it and you're going to be mad at me. And you're trying to figure it out. And then he says, well, yeah, because the book is in here. Right? And you're like, what? And you're trying to figure out, like, what is he talking about? So you're just like, how did the book get in your phone? And and he says, well, I went to the movies. And you're like, awesome. What movie did you see? And he said, well, it's coming out of the movie, and there was this poster, and it said that the movie was based on the book. Like, great. What book was it? What movie was it? He says, well, there's this square at the bottom, and I scanned it, and it says the book is in my phone, but I can't read it. So there was something and you scanned it and it was, and you pull up Google image search and you find a QR code and you go, did it look like this? Aha. So he went to the movies, he saw a poster, he scanned the QR code that downloaded the book into his phone. Right? Now, for me, I'm already thinking I've accomplished great deeds today. I have figured out what the man was talking about. And I haven't even gotten to the solving of the problem yet. So a lot, like, and again, he's trying to hand you the phone, like, make it show up. You go, okay, well, can you open the program you scanned the thing with? Because, with our luck, who knows what this is going to be. And you get it up and you go, okay. And you find out what it was and you go to, I go right to YouTube and I'm like, help me figure this out, please, YouTube. Sometimes it's Google. And I can watch somebody else do a step-by-step of helping him, and he can watch with me, and we can go, oh, well, let's try that. Okay, your phone's a little different. Well, and we can look at it together, and we can figure it out. And this is a true story, by the way. So taking that time, I don't even have to know what he's talking about, and I don't have to know how to use his phone. I don't have to know how he got, where he got to get a book in there. I just have to help him get through the steps of figuring out the solution. And I think one of the best ways to do this, okay, this really is gonna make me look like this guy here. How many of y'all, when you worked at a reference desk, had this shelf behind you that had books on it, and we used to call it the ready reference shelf? Did y'all do that? Yeah, it has like the almanac and the dictionary and a couple other like weird things you're going to need, for 90% of all of the problems. Yeah. So for technology, I have that same kind of thing. I don't have a shelf because that would be really weird. But I do have bookmarks. And sometimes I've worked in libraries where we have a Word document that has links and descriptions. And just like I would put books on my shelf and kind of vet them, I'm going to vet these websites. And so I look for things that are useful. And we can get a copy of this. I would hate for y'all to have to write down any of these references that you hadn't heard about. We can give that to Ellen. I'm sure it'll get to you all. So you can just click things. But having that kind of thing, things that can show you a variety of stuff, things that'll help you more than a Google search, because sometimes you click on some things there and you're going down a rabbit hole. The ones I like, Digital Learn, I think is really great. Teach Parents Tech, it's on YouTube, and it's 1.5 minutes, little short things, showing somebody how to do something really simple. Usually it's just like a one-step procedure, and it's visual. I like that. I also like in pictures because it's visual. So having things like that can really help. And then there is the Google and the YouTube search, of course, like that. And we do work in a library, so sometimes the questions aren't as new and critical that you have to use the internet to figure them out. There's actually books that have been published about how to use, different things in Excel or Word or some of the bigger programs that you might have reference material on. And that's helpful because then folks can take it home and kind of go through it slower. And then sometimes when I'm using a software that I've never seen before and somebody's like, I was trying to use the concat feature to, and I'm like, I don't even know what you said. The help button is always helpful. I sometimes forget that. So what we have is a Digo, any bookmarking software, whatever, and having different sites that have different information and that you can really go to quickly. A lot of times, you you can tag them different ways. If you have certain things for kids under a certain age, can use certain internet computers if they've gone through, your cyberbullying class or whatever like that. You can have different tags, or if it's going to be phone related or iPad related or different mobile devices, you can have different sections, and I find that really helpful. But kind of building your own ready reference shelf. So putting those things on that shelf that you're going to need. I think that's been really helpful for a lot of it. Well, yeah, I got the old version, so it says iStock all over it. Sorry about that. But the remembering that you don't have to have that initial fear when somebody's talking to you, and that you can take it into this, I don't have to know everything. I have to know how to figure out stuff, and I can figure that out with people. And having that kind of open customer service feeling, I think that's a lot of helping somebody is having that kind of, we can take it from I can't to I can, and showing them, like, I know some of the folks I've worked with have been a little cautious about not having that I know everything kind of look to patrons, which I don't have that problem. I kind of look like an idiot most all the time, so I'm used to it. But having that kind of open customer service feeling that shows somebody I'm learning too can actually help them learn, so that they can go, oh, I asked a question last time, and this is how the librarian helped me solve it. This time, I know that I can just start, here, and I can look at this, and they can learn too. I think that's really important. Some of the things that we've talked about, oh, good Lord. I touched it. No, some of the things that we've written down as our proficiencies for technology, and I have a list of about 100 things that are really, basic, simple steps to be a digitally literate citizen. And those are the proficiencies, and they're on our website, the technology proficiency checklist. We also have other online trainings that Christine does, and she's really good at training, and I really wish her internet hadn't gone down. There's a big storm up where she is, so I guess you're stuck with me. And then we also have online the interview steps, the reference interview steps, and different the module that was originally seen that kind of steps you through doing a technology reference interview. And then we have a wonderful webinar online in archived, recorded, that is about going from tech averse to tech savvy. And I guess that it's amazing how fast I go when I'm talking, when I'm kind of nervous and my co-presenter isn't here. But if anybody has any questions, I know that was like the speed version of what I was planning to do today. Oh, I know what I can do. There we go. Hey, Christine.
Hi. In the webinar. Seriously, the storm's gone.
You're killing me,
dude. I want to cry right now. So talking about technology and what can happen. Hail can happen.
Well,
so how do you do?
Hello.
I'm so sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, so we're at the question and answer part, Christine.
You're welcome. So how'd Kieran do? I'm sure he was awesome.
Hi,
I think I
Christine.
went a little
Welcome.
fast.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add? I know you've missed most of it, but was there anything that you'd like to add?
Realistically, as we were putting this together, and I didn't pop in until we had the picture of the old man, so that's kind of where I showed up again, is just really that it's just
You didn't say anything. Hi.
No, I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry, I kind of thought you could see me. I forgot you couldn't see me because it's a FaceTime. All of the rest of the parts were yours, so it was fine.
Well.
No, basically just remember that it really is the same as doing a reference interview, and that I don't know, that was kind of the goal that we had for today's session. So hopefully that came across.
Okay.
But we'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Okay, great. Now, does anybody have a question? And if you do, if you could come down to the front so that they can see you and hear you as well. We've all had technology reference interviews, even if you have some suggestions yourself of how we can handle them. Yes, Ellen.
Hi, I'd like to know how the staff in public libraries in the state in Colorado actually are using the resources that you prepare for them. So do you do training sessions, or is it very much that they do self-directed? Because I'm guessing you've got a fairly spread out population for a lot of Colorado, even with Denver being quite big, you've got a lot of smaller remote communities, and we don't have quite as vigorous an environment as you do with the Rockies, but we've got smaller remote communities. So I suppose how does that training become really effective in particular libraries?
That's a really good question. We try to hit it from all sides because there are a lot of state library staff that actually do training. I'm the only one that does it pretty much full time. So as Kieran mentioned, we do a webinar series once a month, so people can remote in, and we try to make those fairly interactive. I do not do those from home, so lesson learned. And then we have some of the self-paced modules. The one that I don't know if it was Ellen or whoever saw that kind of helped us get to this point was actually made by a colleague, but working on more e-learning kind of self-paced modules that people can take on their own time is something that we're going to continue to try to add. Every time we add new content to the Creation and Learning website, we send out emails, and so I try to let all the consultants at the state library know when I add content. We have other connections throughout Colorado because we are very diverse, especially with the Continental Divide, basically going the other side of the mountains. It's harder to get there to do in-person training. A lot of the in-person training happens in Denver. And then we have kind of a sister organization that we work with that actually does some small conferences around the state. So they do 3 around the state, and we do in-person presentations there as well. So we really try to listen to what people are looking for and what they need. So the information that's on the Creation and Learning website is a lot of that came out in surveys and stuff, the topics that we've been working on. I've got 3 more modules I'm working on: supervision and management, administration, which would cover things like, directorship and HR and that kind of thing, and leadership. So, we're just trying to constantly figure out what people need. And this year we're going to be trying to figure out how to evaluate impact. Once people go to a training or take an online module, is there a behavior change? Is there an organizational change? And are we reaching the people that we need to reach?
And then one of the things I get to do for the state library is go to the really tiny, tiny libraries in my area. And on occasion, I've been known to work the circ desk while the person that works in the library goes through one of the online trainings, because that's the only time they have, and it's the only way we can get them to do it.
So it sounds like you use quite creative solutions to make sure the training actually has impact.
We do, yeah. And if anybody has any suggestions, we're always open to those too.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question they would like to ask?
Just a general question.
Oh, come down.
Yeah. one of the things that that I notice at the library where I work is that the image of the librarian and what the customers are expecting, and the stereotype, if you like, that's been built up over generations, kind of detracts from the whole thing of doing the technology reference interview until they realise that they can come and ask us for help. So we have a lot of old people coming in. Oh, you're running those technology sessions. I need some help with my iPhone. I need some help downloading some ebooks. And once they get the message, it's okay. But that stereotype that's in the community, how do we change that? That there's a small that find out about it, but then there's a whole heap of people that think, oh, that's the reference desk, that's that quiet lady over there, and I don't go and bother her. I don't bother him because he's that guy that sits at that desk. How do we change that and get people to know that they can come and ask us and we'll help them? Do we go out? Do we wander around? Do we wave a banner?
Yes.
I had to stop wearing the vest with the sweater vest with the cats embroidered on it. No, I'm just kidding. I I go out in my community. Again, I live in a really small place, and I think this is different based on where you live. Where I live, there's this one cafe where all the old men sit at the back table. Okay. and I used to go there once a week and just talk about the things we were doing at the library so that they would know. And by them knowing, somehow everybody gets to know, and I don't quite know how that works yet, which shows I'm not old enough. And showing them technology and showing them, what we're doing for the kids is this, and what you want to come see what we're doing with the kids, because that'll get them in the door.
Okay.
To see what we're doing with the grandkids or whatever. And then they go, oh, well, I saw you guys do that thing where you help the kids make that video game with whatever you did with the little cat. Like, that was great. Can you help me use my iPhone? Like, getting them used to the idea that we are doing this bigger level of technology. And I also like to tell old stories about the crazy stuff that happened in public libraries in the United States with Ben Franklin, and how most of his electricity stuff and the actually came out of his public library that he created, but whatever.
I like that.
Getting them to know that we've been doing cutting edge technology all along.
Fantastic. Thanks.
And I would just follow up with it's about making those relationships. And so, like I said, if you can get out of your library, and I know that that's easier for some places than others. If you're a one-person show, if you're out of the library is closed. But the more you can go where your community is and, kind of just be there to help them, embedded librarianship and those kinds of things, I think that will help change that stereotype. But it's interesting that it's kind of pervasive worldwide. So.
Unless they have you chained to your desk.
Do we have any other questions or comments? One of the things that I've found, sorry, I'll just turn that around. Back up. I live in a regional town, and the library is pretty much the only place where the community can come and get onto a computer and have that technology. Yeah, and we've found that a lot of our businesses are actually referring them to us. So if somebody goes to Telstra and they've bought a new phone, Telstra will actually send them to us for us to show them how to use it, which is great. But it's good because we can help them to a point. We have had people come in asking us about plans and whatnot, to which we just say we can't do that. But that's kind of been a good thing because it means that we're getting that extra business, and that is also helping us spread the word as well about that we can help with technology and that kind of thing. But it's certainly difficult getting it out there.
And having them maybe come in and do a presentation or a class in your library, these other businesses, and that always is nice.
Yeah, and I like your idea of the cafe as well. We've talked about that as well, about going down. We've got lots of cafes, as towns do, and we've got ones that have different, I can't think of the word, but we've got ones where all the parents go with their kids, and we've got ones where the older and so we're thinking of trying to target the different cafes and maybe just having a little pop-up stand and on a Tuesday morning or something, and just saying, did you know that you can read books on your phone or whatever it is. So we're kind of looking into that as well.
I took a little, well, it's technically a router, a file share router, but it's battery powered and it's real small, and you can load up different open source books that are, like the classics pretty much that aren't still copyrighted. Gutenberg has a good selection of those, and you can go somewhere and hook it up, and then people can connect with their mobile device to your router and download a book right there with you in a mobile area. It's kind of fun. I mean, if you if you're interested.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Last chance for any other questions, comments? Yeah.
Just tell them. Congratulations. It's great to see the interconnectedness of librarians everywhere, the wonderful positivity, the good works we all do. It happens here, it happens at my library, and it's just great to be part of. And thank them both. Did you hear that?
Okay. I don't know if you heard any. Oh, you did hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, wow, this is a great microphone. Okay, excellent. So basically,
we'll be sending him a check in the mail. Yeah, we'll be sending him a check in the mail for saying all those wonderful things.
But I think it is good to know that it is the same the world over. We're not in this alone. It's not just us that has these issues. It is actually across the world. So that's really great. Oh, we've got another question. Yes.
I'll be loud as well.
Okay.
I'm wondering, just for opinion's sake, how do you best encourage staff that don't necessarily want and feel confident in digital services? Because I was thinking as you were talking about it being such a shame when people are at a front desk and they don't feel confident to talk to people. Sometimes if an older person is talking to someone who is young, they want to see an older face. They know actually it's really easy, and show them the process of a digital thing rather than a younger person behind a library desk. So I struggle sometimes with encouraging staff to get involved. So I always, how do we,
Okay, did you hear that okay?
No.
I heard a lot of it, but not maybe all of it.
So basically the question is, how do we encourage staff who may be reluctant to get involved with technology? How do we get them to assist? And sometimes if older clients are coming in for help with technology, it might be better if it's an older staff member that's helping them so that they know that it is actually doable and it's not just all the young people helping.
Because people always want to throw a young person in the mix, like, oh, the young kids, they know how to do everything. But sometimes people would rather, it's like they'll just, let a young kid maybe set their clock on their microwave or whatever, but they don't actually want to hand their phone or try to learn from a younger person. And getting the staff to buy in, like that's a really big one, I think. Gosh. I think that it's scary because, because it's not known, and it sounds, like, so I went one time to a library and I had a computer and the lady really didn't want to touch it. She was really sure she could make it blow up. I was like, there is no way you can make it blow up. You like, trust me, and I think because she was so unfamiliar that she was just really scared. And I think getting the staff over that kind of like, when it's your job, there's a responsibility to do stuff that you're supposed to do, right? I don't like to take the trash out, but it's my job. I take the trash out. Yeah. And when it's something like technology, there's kind of a fear because I don't know what I'm doing, but I can't let you know that because you're my boss or my manager. So I have to kind of fake it like I know what I'm doing, but I'm actually not comfortable. And I think a lot of folks fall in there where they're not actually comfortable. They're just sort of faking it so that you don't get mad at them because you're their boss. And getting past that level of fear, I think, takes a lot of just patience and kind of, gosh, I hate to say like the carrot and the stick kind of thing, but, it's like, yeah, you really do want to show these folks how to use this technology, and you're the one I want to do it. I remember we had this lady who was awesome at reader's advisory. She it's like she had it memorized, all those all those mystery books with the old lady and the cat, and yeah, she had all of them memorized, and she could tell you, oh, if you liked her, you'll love this one. And I had no idea. She was much better at that. And when I was showing her different apps and different websites that kind of did what she did and weren't as good, and I was saying, if you could help somebody use this and then show them, just kind of building it to their interest, I guess is what I'm saying. If you have an employee who loves to travel, setting them up to be the expert on the travel websites or the software that helps you make reservations or the things that are somehow in their wheelhouse already. That's my only advice. It's hard though. What do you think, Christine? I've been talking all the time.
I disappeared for a while again.
Well, for a while there was two of you, and I saw that.
I think I agree with what Kieran said. There's a lot of empathy, but once again, it's sort of like reminding them of the stuff that they are doing well, and that this is something that they actually can pick up, and maybe give them kind of small assignments when there aren't patrons around, and have them be okay, if a patron came in and asked you X, what would you do? And try to make it as sort of less
Panic and
pressure
run.
intensive
No,
as
okay.
possible. Yeah. So I think there's lots of kind of creative ways that we can do to kind of help ease people along, because we all have those moments where we just feel like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to find this, whatever it is. My big fear when I was working in the public library was the business section. We had a huge business section, and patrons knew what they wanted, but they didn't know what it was called, and they were all reference books. And like every time they asked me a reference question, like my stomach would drop, and I'd be like, I don't know. But you kind of you start to learn, and I think that's really what it is. It's just about learning.
Thank you. Oh, we have another question at the back here.
Very quickly, librarians we love lists, but we're not so good at quality management in some respects. So is there someone who goes through and just makes sure that all of those lists that we've got, like referral lists and where to go to, are actually current? Not like Mr. Reagan is still president, that sort of thing. Wrong one. So do you have a dedicated staff who actually goes through those on a regular basis, like a monthly basis or a quarterly basis? And how do you go off and then find more stuff to put on these lists that are suitable?
It takes time. I think it's in terms of the websites that I maintain. There's software that we're using to run them. The links will show up crossed out if they're no longer working, and so I try to notice those. But if you're working in like a large library and you're keeping these lists, I think at some point somebody just sort of has to be part of what they do, much like weeding the collection. You have to take some time off the desk to go and pull the old books off the shelf, kind of making it somebody's job. And it doesn't take that much time. And then in terms of finding new ones, I think there's lots of different places where, I subscribe to a lot of listservs and blogs and all kinds of things. So I'm always finding new resources, but it does take some time to vet them. So if at all possible, if it can be somebody's job, or you divide it up a little bit, or maybe as people are learning, that's something that like a task that you can give them, have them cull some of the websites and look for new ones.
I know it seems like there's a new thing that does like photo stuff every day. It seems like there's a new website that's the best one to use to make a flyer out of the, and I have several lists that I maintain for the state library and for little rural libraries. And yeah, having something on there that checks to make sure that there's if there's a dead link, that it'll cross it out. That's a plugin that you can put in with a lot of things, and that helps management. It's not perfect, because then you're looking at the list and you see a bunch of things crossed out. You need to go weed. but even finding the new resources that are vetted to put on there, like, yeah, it does take time, and it is just like the books. I wouldn't have an encyclopedia that said one day man might step on the moon in my shelf, because I go through it, I weed it, I follow certain rules, and it's part of my job. And I have to make those lists of technology stuff that same kind of thing.
Okay. Can I ask, with the links that you had up before to helping videos with technology and whatnot, have you done those yourself, or are they linked to ones that other people have done that you're linking to?
Both.
Yeah. So some of them are ones that a lot of what we have on the library creation and learning site are linked elsewhere. So I'm just looking at, Digital Learn, GCF Learn Free, In Pictures, the Teach Parents Tech. Those are kind of resources that other organizations have put together, but we know that they do a really good job. And so we just link directly to them. And then the checklist that Kieran was talking about, the proficiency checklist, that was something that you guys put together, right, Kieran?
Yeah.
And that's not a list of links. It's basically like, you need to know how to open a browser window. You need to know how to do some of these various things. But, that does bring up a good point about you don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel. I don't need to put a list of all of the good websites that I think, I might use in a public library somewhere, because somebody's already done it. And if you link to stuff like Digital Learn or some of the other ones that we had, they've done a lot of that work for you, so that can save some time.
Okay, great. Any other questions? No, okay, I don't think we have any more questions. So thank you so much, Kieran and Christine, for your time today. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sure we've learnt something. If you could please thank Kieran and Christine.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Do I have to do anything? Oh, no. Okay, so what we've got next on the agenda is some of the feedback that we've gotten from past seminars is that people get sick of just sitting there all day. So I have to ask you all to stand. And what I'd like you to do is have a chat to the person next to you, in front of you, behind you, about what you've just heard about, and if there's anything that you can learn from them or impart to them. And do some stretches while you're at it.
So, yeah.
So do you just want me to?
Okay, thank you everybody. Hello and welcome back everybody. If you'd like to take your seats. Well, thank you. It certainly sounded like everybody had some good discussions going there, so that's really great. Catch up with some other people. I'm now going to pass over to Kathy.
Thanks, Sharon. So this is our little interactive session, and anyone who's been to a seminar before, where we do our little interactive sessions, this mic will be coming to you. The question that we're posing this morning, and it's interesting following on from the presentation just before are what are reference resources? How would you classify them? What would you say must have been a reference thing, or no, that's not, that's something else entirely? And I will ask for volunteers. So we have quite a few people in the crowd today, and I'll be getting answers from just about every one of you. And I have no shame, so trust me on this one. So, if I had to ask you, what's a really good reference resource that you think, no, got to have that one, what would you say?
No idea, actually. I think that anything that you can use to answer a question is a reference resource.
Does it have to be a book?
Stanley Gibbons, Stamps of the World. Okay, the picture reminds me of something which I learned about back in the old days when I was doing my university degree, when UTS had new paradigms of what perhaps the information world was going to be. And Michael Garbett, I always remember this guy called Michael Garbett because he was talking about working in perhaps a natural history museum and pulling out drawers of insects, and this brings it straight to mind that information, or indeed reference sources, is the thing. So it's basically anything. And that's what we have to keep in mind. It's anything that a person wants. Another great theorist, Brenda Durbin, stated that information is a user construct. So it's whatever the person wants or can deal with, I suppose.
Anyone else in this back row trying to hide up here? Why? So in this regard, your long-serving staff members are a reference resource. So what about our brand new students? Are they a reference resource? They've just graduated. They have all of this brand new library knowledge. How do we use that?
Okay, I've got an inquiry. My normal resources that I go to aren't supplying me the answers. What have you been talking about lately in your lectures, etc.?
And it's not necessarily sitting on the shelf. So what are reference resources? They're anything. Stanley Gibbons, great. He actually sits in the non-fiction section of my library, right next to a couple of other bits and pieces. When it comes to our ready reference collection, our little section of shelves, that's 5 shelves. What do you think you might find there? A dictionary. What language? When you speak. How many libraries here have a number of language dictionaries sitting in their reference collection? Yes. I have to be honest, in my library we only have the English dictionary sitting in the reference collection, but our multilingual dictionaries are as close as you can possibly get to the circulation desk. It's actually a fluke of the non-fiction arrangement, but it works really well because they're really, really handy to get to. So dictionaries, what else? Making me run.
We actually have separate reference public PCs in our main branch reference area, and we find that they're really valued by people studying who don't want to be in the tech centre, which can be quite loud, especially once school is finished and people are all coming in and plopping their children there while they go and get their books and things like that. But also for school students studying HSC, family history, people all use that and find that really valued. And we've actually just done a massive community survey consultation process, and one of the things that kept coming up was requests for those sorts of things in other branches. So that's obviously something that's really valued and accesses all our databases and that as well.
Who else has something like that in their library? Yes, brilliant. But I suppose it still comes down to, we've got Stanley Gibbons in our non-fiction. Somebody else has gone, fabulous reference tool, which it is. And other people have dictionaries in their reference section. We've got the bulk of ours in our non-fiction. But what makes a thing a reference resource? We've had anything. It's pretty open. Availability. Why?
I think reference resources content as a brief information that can give you a general information about a particular topic. So it's good for people to start researching, just to get to start to know about the topic. So it's just brief information and then cover different type of topics.
That's actually a really good point. One of my favourite online reference resources is Wikipedia. And I like Wikipedia because I can get a quick grasp on a topic and from there launch to something else.
Cost is, we use that a lot to siphon off what we keep in reference and what we can't. For example, I just catalogued a book on voice production, fantastic book published in America. The cost of it was prohibitive to put in the lending library because actors are notoriously thieves, so we put it in the reference library.
Does anybody else have things that they've treated similarly? Oh, it's too expensive.
Not on that one, but I'm just saying that willingness to share is another one, and the perfect example of that is volunteers. We do have volunteers. I mean, staff has got limited time; they can spend limited time with each customers. Whereas if we have volunteers, they can spend a little bit more extra time. So capitalizing on their knowledge and skills and sharing it with their patrons.
Actually, a really good idea.
So also our local history, things that you can't replace, that you might only have one copy of and you can't possibly lend out.
Thinking about using volunteers, one of the things that we're looking at is building up our technology information sessions with our public, and then getting them to come back and be our tech sources for the next session, for the next group of people. So we actually have a group of volunteers that we can call on for our tech sessions and our tech reference inquiries. But we have reference resources. Some of them we stick on the shelf. Some of them we put online and we make them available through our website and through, the way that we deliver the service. Over the last couple of years, the discussion about reference resources has really prompted a lot of toing and froing, I guess, and a lot of it has had to do with cost. We've had budget cuts. We need to suddenly have to address the need to have e-resources and more of those, as opposed to physical items on the shelf. We have space restrictions, so we can't actually fit the things in the library because we've had to take out another row of books in order to fit the new technology thing in. So we've had to rethink our whole approach to the collection development of the reference collection, and indeed the way that reference collection is used. Now, this can also be reinforced by when we've had to redesign our libraries and suddenly the reference desk no longer exists. So if you've gone roving reference, and if you're completely mobile, and if you're just walking around with an iPad or a tablet or your phone, what do you use? What's your reference resource? Who does roving reference? Shirley, what's your roving reference resource?
I'd probably say our catalogue is the first stop.
She gets the chocolate phone.
Why? Because that is my first reference point to where I need to go next. Is it something that we have in our collection? Is it something online I can access? Or do I need to then think outside the square and go further?
Exactly, and that brings, I guess, to the next point about our reference collections and our reference resources. How do we catalogue them? Who roved over here?
I tend to use catalogs like Amazon, and there's a music one called Discogs, which are really good for music. And if you haven't got it in your catalog, you can have a look on these and set you on the path that way.
I love Google. So how do we catalogue our reference resources? Do we make sure that they have these gorgeous records with some intricate subject headings in them? Do we make sure that, so long as they're in the reference collection on the opaque, they're good?
I was just going to add, roving reference collections would be good old fantastic fiction for when somebody wants to know what's the third one in the series because I've read the first two.
Which brings up an interesting point. When we're roving around or providing any kind of reference service, it isn't just an information request that we are dealing with. The information might be a reader's advisory inquiry. It's not just, and the other, I guess, element to that is third-party reference and how we provide that service.
One of the other good things about roving reference with your tablet is, of course, all the apps that are available now. So we make sure that all the tablets have got all the apps on there so that if we do need to go somewhere else, it's an easier way to go.
Favourite reference app?
Oh, goodness. Actually, one of the ones that we use is Google Translate, or like a translator app. We don't have a very multicultural society, but we do have a lot of, say, Koreans that come in, and often the communication barrier is just there, and so we just find it easy to open up the translation app, type it in, and go, you're off and running.
So how do we also make sure that all of our staff are across what they will find in that reference collection, are aware of what we actually have as far as reference resources go? What do we do about that? Hey girls, come on, we all do staff training. How do we let them know?
You talk amongst each other.
Pardon?
You talk, you teach, you learn.
In staff meetings, when you're all together? Yep.
We have a weekly catch-up on a Thursday, and it's just after lunch, and everyone's updated each week on what's going on in the library and the days.
That's fantastic.
Emails, because if we have a part-time staff, email is another good one.
The email? Who reads all their email? I do.
If you have an interesting reference inquiry or even just a general one, you might get somebody over and show them what you're doing. Somebody might not be so familiar.
That's actually a really good point. And it comes down to that staff training aspect. How many of us, as the key go-to person for reference or information services or technology inquiries, is that every time someone walks in the door with that question, staff ring you and staff say, Catherine's the one to go to, talk to her. She's the one who can help you. Can you just come out here for a sec and help this person with their e-reader question? The way we deal with it is, I can't actually do that right now, but here's how you do it. And over the phone, run them through it. Or in fact, go out there and go, right, you come with me and we will go through this together. But we share that information, we have those conversations, we go through and just go, this is this fabulous thing and here's how it works. So often it might be a structured approach. Every Thursday at our meeting, we make sure that we talk about these things. Or another structured, ad hoc thing where it's about conversations. It's about spending time with other people to work through things. And that can also take the aspect that when you're helping that person with their reference inquiry, that by spending time with them, other people come in and you find you've got a little bit of a group going as we're all working through the thing together. I went for a really long walk last night. I'm doing it again today.
I was just thinking there's a related aspect to what you were saying, and I suppose each of us will find subject matter experts, people, and will follow their blogs and Twitter feeds. And so for me, that's really valuable as well, because I've found the expert who I trust, and I trust their sources as well, and I'll pass them on.
So your learning becomes somebody else's learning, and we can share that information. You've got a new library manager that just started. You're responsible for the reference information collections. And they have just asked you, what are reference resources? Because they come from a business background and they actually have no idea. How do you answer that question? How would you answer a definition of a reference resource?
I'd say to him or her, how did you get the job?
I wore the right clothes. How do you define to Mr. Brown as he walks in the door, but what's this collection? What does that mean? Why do you have these books separate? Calling on volunteers? Is a dictionary difficult to obtain? So what's in yours?
Not much.
We don't have much in ours.
Not anymore. Our reference collection is based on our e-resources and our ability to make a reference inquiry as a voyage of discovery.
And is it a voyage of discovery?
Quite often, yes.
So our council has just taken on the approach of digital first. And I find it really exciting because it means that I have to balance my collection, my physical collection, with my digital collection.
By my definition, a reference collection is a collection that's not for one. And following up what was mentioned down the track there, it's a collection that you need to refer to, whether you're working with the patron to solve a research question or not. So it's a collection that you define that you want to be on the shelves all the time so that you can refer to. So things like dictionaries, encyclopedias, those sort of things are sort of no-brainers. You know?
Thanks, Marty. They are a good starting point.
Sort of building on what was just said, also not just for ourselves, but items that we want available for a particular, it might be just our demographic. Like my collection, physical collection might be different from someone a couple of towns over, because that's what our demographic needs. We've actually just added a whole separate HSC reference collection, because we found that our HSC books are just never on the shelf. So all the students that come in every afternoon didn't have access to the Excel books and stuff like that. And that's now our most popular area of reference.
What library?
Campbelltown.
Campbelltown. HSC collection.
So we've always assumed that the reference collection is where you get your quick, factual, short, brief answers to things. But it's kind of being taken over by Google, which is where most people get their short, brief, factual answers to things. So we tend to hold on to the things that Google can't tell you, like antique valuation guides.
Very true. And I guess that the primary skill of the reference librarian is being able to facilitate the Google discovery. So you know that, no, you don't want the first two hits, you want the fourth one. And I actually had my mother do this the other day. I was like, no, Mum, fourth one down. That's the one you want. Why? Why do I want that one? Because I know the way Google works that it's the one you want to go to. Which really helps when I'm her only favourite daughter. So it's great. But the point about demographics is, I guess, the interesting one, because so much of the discussion that's come through from library staff, as you know, we constantly have this question, What should I have in my reference collection? What makes a good reference collection? What are the needs of a reference collection? It's what your community needs. It's what your community is made up. Whether it's made up of actors, whether it's made up of farmers, completely different. Their needs are different. So, you know, you might say that the Tamworth Library should probably put the Land newspaper in their reference collection because it does occasionally have a high theft capacity. Hey, it's a newspaper, but it's the land, and it's about farmers, and it has a particular interest to that group. But you could probably say that Campbelltown may not necessarily need that same thing. So when you come to look at your reference collection and what you should have in it, it isn't just about budget. Yes, it has an impact. But it isn't just about reflecting your e-resources so that you can better support them. It's about what your community needs to have ready access to in order to answer those quick questions that people either can or cannot. Or if it's in our case and we've lost the internet yet again, I've got a book that I can rely on. I've got another tool that I can go to that can help kick off the discovery discussion and go from there. I think Marty made the comment about reference collection is not for loan. That's very true. We do make our reference collection not for loan. But there are many libraries that have in their non-fiction collection items that are not for loan. And part of that is about enhancing that browsing capacity of I'm sitting amongst the information books and I'm exploring what rose might grow in my area. And I can borrow that book and I can borrow that book, but I can reference Maccabee's Roses because I can't borrow it because it's the reference resource, but it's sitting in a location that helps inform my discovery and my search. So from that perspective, when we're looking at non-fiction items and the way people discover information, how many of us have actually moved towards not just removing things from the reference collection to shrink it down and make it smaller and more reflective of e-resources, but to shift those resources into our non-fiction collections and help enhance the way people discover what they're after. So how many of us do that? Does it work? Yes? Do you think it works? Maybe? How does it work?
Well, they're more discoverable, so people are looking at them. I've only been there a little while, so I haven't seen the overall results, but...
Does it work for you if you're looking for something?
Yeah, it's good.
Anybody else down the line? They just pass the mic. Andrew, how's it arranged where you are?
We haven't introduced integration of reference into the non-fiction collection, mainly because our non-fiction collection is so tight on the shelves. But I think it's a great idea.
So how much space does your reference collection take?
It used to take up the whole floor of the central administration building in Wollongong. It's now down to one wall, but it was a whole floor at one point, not so long ago.
Not so long ago. Marty, how's it arranged at Grafton?
Yeah, we've definitely integrated some of just, well, Grafton and the other 6 branches, 5 of which are one-person branches. So, yeah, for space and budget, we've integrated a lot of it. But it also breaks down that notion that the reference collection is somehow a better collection than the rest of the collection. So if people go to a book that is not blown in the general shelves, then they've got the browsing facility of other books that are equally useful.
Wouldn't there be a problem there? And I know borrowers, they stumble across this book, they'd say, I want to borrow this book, and you'd say, I'm sorry, it's not for loan. And they go, well, why is it here? Why is it in all the other books that are for loan? I want to borrow it. And then you've got the problem.
So the libraries that do this, how do you answer that exact issue?
Yes.
We just have big yellow stickers that say not for loan or smaller yellow stickers, and we have signage on the shelves that says such book this is, and it's just not a problem.
I find that a lot of our reference collection that isn't for loan ultimately ends up being on one of our e-resources. I find so much that's in the Go virtual reference library. So to be honest, if they can't take the physical book, there's a way to have it in your hand or at home on your computer, which is not really difficult.
Moving down now, someone else down here. Yep. So if you want to pass it down, just go like depending on how much of that particular book they want, I offer to photocopy whatever information it is they need. If they can't take it, they can take a few pages from it.
And is that photocopy free?
Yes.
Yes.
And for the ones that aren't too expensive, you get a duplicate copy.
When you've got the budget. Anybody else? Come on, move in the microphone this way. There's somebody else here who had an answer. So to come back to the question about how you actually know what you do.
With those people who, for instance, want to plant new roses, and I can borrow this book and borrow this book, but I want to borrow Maccabee's roses. Why can't I borrow it? Why is it there in the lending collection if I can't borrow it? And therein starts a brand new conversation. And I suppose from my perspective, my personal perspective, I have a certain amount of leeway because I'm in control of that collection. It's my baby. And I often make an assessment of the item has generally come from the reference collection into non-fiction, retained its not-for-loan status, and it's there sitting amongst its lendable cohort. Could be it's 15 years old. Could be it's 25 years old. Yes. I'll actually make that assessment going, you know what, should this item still be not for loan? Depending on its content, I might just turn around, you know what, you can borrow it. Just going to change a few statuses here, cover up the not for loan sticker, off you go. Merry Christmas. Happy customer, repeat customer. However, Maccabee's Roses will generate a discussion about going, you know what, this is too useful a resource to actually make it lending. And I can photocopy that page for you about those particular roses that you're after. And because it's an information inquiry, yes, photocopy will be free. So often, it's actually about having a conversation, which in essence comes back to the reference interview. So every time we have these discussions, people know that they can come back and ask us another thing. When we first moved our reference collection, the bulk of it, into our non-fiction collection, we had a lot of those conversations. Why can't I borrow this item? And sometimes those conversations are with little Johnny, who wants to borrow the book on castles, and it's not for loan. Well, the book on swords, actually, that's the one that's not for loan. Because it's about antique swords. And it's got some very, very intricate information in it that we, oddly enough, for Coffs Harbour, find ourselves referring to at least once a month. But we still leave it there in our reference resources, in our non-for-loan, non-fiction items rather on the reference shelf, because we want someone to discover it and then come and talk to us. So again, what are reference resources? Things that define our community, things that help our community connect to the questions that they seem to be always asking us, things that aren't on Google, things that we can't find any other way, tools that we go, that is really, really handy. Items that reflect our e-resources, items that reflect the needs of our customers. Now, it might be, it's not just the demographic of what's our community made up of, but our customer could be council itself. So sometimes those reference resources need to reflect our council. So again, I'll just come back to Shirley for a minute. If you could have 5 5 things, and only 5, in your reference collection, always there, not necessarily sitting on your physical shelf, occasionally sitting on your virtual shelf, what would they be? The top 5. Google Maps.
People sometimes like to have the whole.
I would agree. We actually have the street directory for the mid to far north coast. That's the one that gets asked for a lot. Goodreads. Who's who? Top 5.
Anatomy books.
Anatomy, yes. The really big one that's too heavy to actually shift out the door.
It doesn't fit on the shelves.
And it's got really good pictures and they're in colour. The information is excellent.
I like the Who Writes Like.
Who Writes Like.
Advisory.
Top 5. Come on, we've all got more than 5 resources on our reference shelves. Atlas. Our atlases don't actually fit on our reference shelves, so we've got a real map table. And we'll swap the atlases around and open it up to a new page.
And our local town map.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this information centre is just too far out. They actually come into town and then they come in and say, do you know where such and such is? It's got a map. Okay, behind the desk. Photocopy.
And how many of those do you think you go through in a month? Your local map. High tourist area. Yes, they sit at our circulation desk. We hand them out like they're candy. Part of that is our information service, our information shop, moved to the Big Banana. And then it moved down to the Big Banana, and now it's right down at the jetty, which is lovely. And the cafes there are fabulous. And the beach, of course, is beautiful, but it's all the way down at the jetty. And it's less accessible. So we go through heaps. That's fun.
A lot of libraries, especially smaller ones, would have a title that they did hold. I know the Maclean Library needs to have the clans and tartans of Scotland.
Who's actually driven through Maclean? What's the notable feature about their telegraph poles? Tartans. Different ones from every one. So yes, you can get a book on tartans in order to know it.
We get a lot of local history inquiries in Goulburn. And the one thing I couldn't live without is the map of our cemetery. How about you, Michelle? It's not something you can find online. It's just, you have to have it part of your reference.
I won't make comments about dead people. Top 5.
Did someone mention dictionary?
Dictionary. Top 5, I'm going to start pointing at people.
The community information.
Community information. Is it a physical copy or an online copy?
We have both.
You have both. How huge is it in the physical copy? 200 pages?
It hasn't been printed in a while, but we still have people who come in to want to see the physical copies, but the online version's updated.
And it's indexed beautifully? Or because it's online, you find and?
By librarians, yes.
Yeah. I'm responsible for our community directory.
Currently, university admission is a book.
For our library, I'd say the 12 public PCs and the law handbook.
Stats and comments. Okay, dictionaries, stats and comments, law handbook.
I like our online research guides here at the State Library that are been made by staff who are specialised in that area. And so if I don't know a lot about that area, like business and government, I can go to that research guide and then get pointed in the right direction.
we've got a lot of people come for the newspaper, and we always keep a 3-month on the hard copy. There's a lot of development going on in Parramatta, so we have been asking a lot of the time about the heritage studies, and they are part of our reference collection.
Not that Parramatta has any history whatsoever.
Everyone here, do you have nut jobs and grubs? I mean, and by grubs, I don't mean grubby people, but just grubs in the way they behave. And nut jobs, I mean just nutty people.
So, who actually includes in their reference collection a full calendar of the phases of the moon? The answer would be yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we actually had one of our council meetings last week, quite contentious. Full moon. We were a little bit scared. Mainly because we had a major library project going up and it could have gone another way. But yes.
Did you have it? Everyone else?
Oh, yes. Okay, so great question. Who has unique and interesting, slightly left of centre, eccentric individuals come to your library on a regular basis? Would you like to know why? We are a public library. We are open to everyone. We tend to only kick you out if you, cross the line a little bit. We have air conditioning, we have cold water, we have clean toilets, we have toilet paper.
And we are kind.
We are kind people.
In Parramatta, we have an interesting customer who comes in every evening, and we call him as a 3 questions reference customer. And because initially he used to come with almost an hour or an hour and a half that we had to devote towards him, so now it's been restricted to 3 questions. And we use all the electronic resources because we need to give him a bit printout of the answers that we finally arrive at. And we've used resources, online resources like Google, Trove, Amazon, Wikipedia, and he asked questions on political figures of the world, churches, faiths, and all other controversial topics, but which are fair enough for us to answer. So he's there every evening, and he goes to a couple of our branches as well. He's an elderly gentleman, and he has a lot of time, but obviously we have now got it down to 3.
We all get those interesting characters. We also have strategies in place for dealing with them. Make sure that suddenly the phone will ring. I'm really sorry, but I'm needed out the back. It's quite urgent. I've got a meeting to get to. But it actually brings up that point. Reference and information services to our community let us explore topics we would never think about. We get questions that just leave us going, what? But they're great. Because suddenly you're going, oh, well, I've got all these skills to answer the question to help you find where you need to go. Here's how we'll find it.
Example, I don't. I do document delivery as part of my very varied and multi-skilling positions. And to obtain material for some customers can be quite challenging. And the question started off with, could I obtain an article on hairy ground dwelling caterpillars? And I spoke to the gentleman and said, where did you get your resources from, your citations, etc. And he said, it was reference to me. So I went on the hunt for it, and I discovered that the articles that he was interested in were published by a little-known organisation in Western Australia, and I couldn't get ready access to them. So I communicated with this group to have a wonderful relationship develop with the person who ran the organisation, who knew the woman who had written the articles, who she told me had very sadly passed away recently and was a very well-respected member of their group. And she gave me open access to their collection for our customer. I was able to provide the articles that he wanted. I established a lovely relationship with that group who put me onto other organisations that dealt with the same sort of material, and I was able to provide this to my customer, who then had a lovely close discussion with me about the reason he needed his material was that he was researching why so many thoroughbred foals were being aborted by the mares in the Hunter region, and it became a whole journey, and that's what I love about reference.
And that typifies how our reference resources are a starting point to the many and varied questions that we have come in the door every single day that lead not just our library members and our customers on a journey of discovery, but ourselves as well. We make new connections so we can develop even more a strong collection, a strong resource, and an excellent reference information service. And that, I believe, my time is up. So thank you all very much for your contribution to this discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you everybody for contributing. I'll turn the camera back. So moving on from reference resources, we're now going to talk about another area that is coming up, and Ellen's going to be presenting this one on chat and Twitter reference. Please welcome Ellen. Yep.
Okay, so what really it's just saying is that the group session, the early interactive session wasn't heard on Blue Jeans. Yeah. Which was always going to be kind of a bit risky anyway for that one. Yes, so this was originally going to be, I saved Jennifer Wilson. This did not save. This was done with Jennifer Wilson and I had a version saved with Jen's name on it. Obviously, I actually had my computer crash this morning when I was reloading it. So please read Jennifer Wilson and Ellen Forsyth there for this. And this is very much thinking about, some days it's happier than others, isn't it? Okay, I'm just going to shut that down. I'm going to open it up. Beautiful thing. Now I'm using this, which was produced earlier this year by Rebecca McCorkindale, highlighting that libraries are for everyone, because sometimes it's about different means of access to get to the information. This graphic is available for use with credit in, I think it's now over 20 languages and with a range of images, because she's really making the point that libraries are for everyone and different people have different means of access. Now, I know people are talking about roving reference today, and I still think it's super exciting, but I came across this image recently of Yarra Plenty from 2007. We're talking 10 years ago, with a fairly chunky tablet, and even then they were able to rove. And that kind of highlights, how do people know they can ask questions or receive assistance with seeking information from libraries? Now, it's fine. We've already been discussing that people come in, they ask questions, but everyone doesn't know that they can do this. Everyone doesn't know that this is possible. So how's your library proactively telling people they can ask a question if they're walking past in the street and they see a library, or if they're looking at your website, or they're looking at your app? How do you actually tell them? Do any of you tell them at those points that they can ask a question? Now, I can use an example from the State Library, because we have really lovely banners that hang outside the library, but they don't tell you that you can come in and ask a question. They tell you the great exhibitions that we have on here. So even for an organisation like us, sometimes people mightn't know that they can come in and ask a question. So some libraries are using social media as a way of going, hey, you can ask us questions. And so particularly with Twitter chat, there are various specific ways. One is someone just tweets at the library and you go, oh yeah, someone's tweeted at me. Oh, I'll answer that one. Now, have any of your libraries that use Twitter had someone just kind of fly a random question at you that you picked up because of them using your username? No. Another one, and the second example is much more a university example, is where a librarian tweets the resources. I have also noticed some academics are using Twitter in this way to interact with their students. They will have an online discussion with lots of resources coming out. And then there's the private messaging. That's probably not so appropriate for a public organisation. Now, one library that's doing it quite well, and unsurprisingly, is the British Library. Now, I'll just go to their Twitter stream. Now, this is specifically their reference service. The British Library has lots of different, quite targeted Twitter streams, blogs, etc., because they're a really big library, so it makes sense for them to have quite narrowed down resource areas, because maybe you are only interested in their audio files, and actually their sound blog is a very interesting one to follow with some interesting local studies elements. But this one is very much their reference services and actually proactively saying, hey, we can actually help you with information. Not sure where to go. Yes, they're even using cheesy dog photo, because people will look at photos of dogs and cats. And I do have a gratuitous animal photo in later on. And again, this is very much a how we promote our services and and that you can ask questions. You'll have to explore it more later on. Now, with Twitter reference, there are some advantages, and some of it is about speediness and timeliness, but that does actually depend on how closely you're monitoring the stream. If you're not monitoring it and you look 3 days later when you post something, it's not actually going to feel particularly timely to your client. Now, also, when I'm saying Twitter, it could be Facebook reference as well. The disadvantage is the clients may actually expect faster responses than you can actually cope with. It depends on the volume, although I don't think that really is an issue for too many. How do you let people know when the service is actually going to be available? That you will be responsive, that you won't be responsive. For example, outside work hours, you might have a sleepless client who wants to ask a question at 3 o'clock in the morning. Are you actually going to answer it at 3 o'clock or 3:05? And do you need a policy around these things? And does this fit within your social media policy? Who's got a social media policy? Okay, some of you. So then that makes it even more awkward for those of you who don't. But does Twitter reference, Facebook reference, Instagram reference? I have seen people putting questions through Instagram. Is it covered by your your social media policy, is it covered by your code of conduct? Now, there are other libraries that are using chat as an option, and I kept thinking chat would take off in Australia, but it hasn't. But it's been a very solid resource in some other places. So this is a US library, so you just have to give your name and your email address, and then provide the librarians there, and you can tell whether they are online for chat or not, because you see that little box with the red line above it on the, I'm slightly dyslexic, so it will be my left, your right, that actually says whether someone's online. You've probably used services for different things here that, do you want to chat now, as a way of providing reference support to what you're doing. So there are several US libraries that are doing this still and finding it as a key way to look at resources. I might come back to that one. In Washington, D.C., their public library, they actually advertise particular times for Ask Away DC. They've even got their own hashtag. I like hashtags. But I think this is a nice way of doing it, because they're then promoting it through their information stream, so Twitter, and they're going, it's a finite time we're going to do this for. Now, they're not making it clear whether they monitor it at other times. They may be discreetly monitoring it other times, but really, ask at this time. We're suggesting that you might want to ask about reference inquiries, collections programs, etc. We'll do a bit of readers advisory as well. I'm upset they talk about book recommendations, because it should be suggestions, but I think I'm just a bit focused on So that's actually a nice way, because they're saying we'll do it every Thursday for an hour, which means you can manage your staffing around it, because you're saying you'll do it every Thursday for an hour. You're not saying you'll do it anytime someone puts a question through. You're saying we're doing it at managed time. Now, from a client perspective, not quite as convenient, because I might want to know how to download my ebook at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're not going to help me if I'm doing Ask Away DC. Probably no one is going to help me other than various useful cheat sheets. So, but I actually think having it at a predictable time makes it easier for the clients to come across it. Hopefully they've done an experiment that the early afternoon is the time when people have the questions, rather than, different times of day. Or this might be the time they can manage it in terms of staffing, and they see how it goes. But I think this is an interesting way of experimenting, but also as a way, on the website, it's telling people you can ask us questions. Oh, I can't make the Ask DC. Oh, did you know you could come into the library? Did you know you could send us an email? Did you know that there are other means? So even if people aren't really using the I'm going to tweet my question, because some questions are awkward enough when people want to ask them face to face. They're not actually going to put it out with their Twitter username. So, but this is a nice way of promoting that you can ask questions, however it's done. Toronto Public Library, I think, has cornered the public library market in football associated, and I'm probably embarrassing myself, I'm probably going, that's baseball, isn't it? But they do, with their local sporting codes, they actually do book spine poetry, and sometimes the other team's public library is tweeting back photographs. So when they've got, I think it's baseball and ice hockey that they do as the big Twitter book discussions, but it's another way of kind of going, you can ask us about stuff like sport and we'll actually be nice and answer. But definitely check out the Toronto information there. New York Public Library, via their Instagram account, is taking a different approach. They're using the hashtag Let Me Librarian That For You, and are digging through their old reference questions. And they are generally not hurtful, so they're not choosing ones that kind of go, gee, how done was our client? But it's also the kind of quirky, you can go, oh, yeah, I can get how that can happen. So this is someone's conflated some poems. A fair enough reference question. So it's a nice way. They post one of these to their Instagram account once a week. So it's a nice way of going, we'll answer questions by showing our quirky old questions And gee, aren't they cute? They're actually typed. Some of them are even handwritten, you know, quirky old technology. So they're using it. This may trigger some questions through their Instagram, but they're doing it as a way of generally going in questions, social media. We'll see what you come at us with. I think this is quite nice. They always get a lot of likes on their quirky